now you wouldn't think hearing that I used to be a singer, would you? Isn't it? First time all day you've agreed with me. Listen, no, I used to be a singer. I'm better now, but I used to do all those country and western songs, because you can always sing country. It doesn't matter what you sing, country western, as long as you do the tune, you don't have to know the words, do you? Music now, it's all gone modern. I think, and I don't feel I'm terribly old, but I feel that there's been a gap in my life where we went from the Beatles to punk, and I lost out. It's true, isn't it? There's punk and heavy metal and pins in your head. I mean, when we were 18 with a pin in your nose, you went to hospital. They're going to university now, have you seen them? And they walk, have you seen them? They've got hair like a lodging house cat. And they're walking around, okay, man, yeah, I'm switched on. We weren't even plugged in. And it's the songs. Do you remember songs like White Christmas? Now there's a nice song. That's going to live forever, thank God. It's songs like that are beautiful. It's been going, 60-odd years now? What beautiful song, they sing it every year. Can you imagine if today's punk songs were to last as long as White Christmas? Can you picture the scene? 60 years from now. Little old couple sat by the fire. And he puts this record on, right? I hate you! I hate you! And she says, darling, they're playing our song. But, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. What worries me is the names of the groups. Def Leppard. Twisted Sister. The young fella said to my grandmother, they didn't have Duran Duran when you were a girl. She said, no, but there was a lot of diphtheria. I mean, I was used to singing the ordinary basic standard songs. When I first started doing the clubs and I played guitar and sang the odd Jim Reeves song and things like that, it used to be fun because in those days, songs kind of had a story and you could tell story jokes. I mean, people don't do that now. People don't tell stories anymore, do they? All the jokes are political or they're impressions of somebody else. Nobody tells the basic jokes. I remember the first one I ever told on stage. And it was only because some fella in the bar had said, hey, try this when you go on. After your second song, just stick this. And it was that joke about the fella who was going around the houses begging at Christmas. You know the one? And he knocked at the door and it was freezing cold. And he said, excuse me, madam. He said, I'm on the road, I'm begging. He said, I'm starving, I'm freezing cold. He said, I don't suppose you can help me out. And she said, well, as a matter of fact, my man, I certainly can. She said, my late husband has left some clothing and I'm sure he wouldn't have minded. You can have them. She said, it's actually a Salvation Army uniform. You've got the great coat and the cap. He said, oh, thank you very much indeed, ma'am. And he puts the great coat and the cap on. I feel a lot better. You give him a pair of mittens. She said, here's a couple of pounds and you can buy yourself some sustaining nourishment. He said, thank you very much, ma'am. Round the corner, into the pub. Puts the money on the counter, cap on the counter. He said, pint of bitter, mate. He picks the pint up, he looks down, the cap's gone. He thought, hello? Looks around the pub, they're passing the hat round. Everyone's putting money in. Gets back to him, he's got about 45 quid. Grabs the money, he's legging it out the door. And the barman said, hey, what about the war cry? He said, Geronimo! Because I used to love the story type jokes. And I love the situation stories as well, do you? Like the fellow who rang the police station, he said, I believe you've caught the burglar who broke into our house last night. They said, yeah. He said, will you ask him to tell you how he got in without waking the wife? I love the stories then. When I first started going around the clubs as a singist, I worked some amazing places. I've got to be very careful that I don't name them personally, but I was working this particular cabaret type club, which is not a million miles from the Abattoir in Liverpool. And it had a gambling room and all that, And at the time, I was like singing semi-incognito. Nobody actually knew what I was doing, and I was, including me. And I was teaching in the day, and actually I was in the running, for deputy head of our school. There was me and this nun in the room for this job. And I figured it was, I'd just edge the lady. So I'm working this particular, it's a Saturday night. Now, I didn't know, because there's gambling going on and all kinds of weird people. I don't know who they are, I'm just singing. And the door burst open, and every policeman in the world came in. And I thought, it's a raid. The nun has got the job. Now, the bass player says to me, you're all right, Tommy. You're a bona fide visitor. Your name's in chalk on the wall. Sit down here. So I'm sitting on the bass amplifier next to the bass player, right? And this inspector comes up and gets the mic and says, this is a raid. Repeat, raid. Bring me the membership book. You know the book you sign going in. So he gets it and he says, I would like to see the following people. Mickey Mouse. George Washington. Now there's a docker at the bar. There's a docker at the bar with a pint, and he picks it up like that, and a policeman put his hand on his arm and he said, don't drink that beer, it's evidence. So he bought another one. And they served him. I mean, where else in the world would that happen? There was a little Catholic club in Kirkby, not a million miles from where we stand, and every Sunday night they had a rather special night, because there was a place in Liverpool called the Cabaret Club, and they used to get the top of the bill from the Cabaret Club to work this little Catholic social club on Sunday nights. And in fact, the week I did it, Carl Denver was top of the bill, and two fellas called Sid and Eddie, who are now Little and Large, were the comedians, and I was the singer, you know. And it was probably the biggest club I'd ever worked in those days. It probably, in fact, only held about 400, but it looked massive to me, like Wembley, you know. And it was an L-shaped room, and the stage was in the corner of the L. So when you were on, it was like a tennis match. There was 200 either side, you know. And in fact, if you look straight ahead, you're talking to the bar and the barmaids. So I had just come off stage this night, it's packed out. I'd just come off stage, I'm going into the dressing room, and the fight starts. And all the right-hand side got up and ran at all the left-hand side. And you know what Liverpool fights are like, you know. Don't hit him, he's on probation! All that, you know.
I don't want to hit him, I just want to reason with him, that's all, leave me. Just make a point here, that's all.
And it's like World War III, there's cheers going, there's bottles flying. And a priest about 5 foot high comes on the stage, rips his collar off, and dives into the fight. Now, a man bigger than Ben Nevis, this man is about 9 foot across, massive fella in a big overcoat, gets on the microphone and says, anyone who hits the Holy Father answers to me. So everybody stops. And the priest going round whacking him in the gobsy. And this little old lady said, the father loves a good scrap. I said, I'm not surprised they can't hit him back. I love this story. I tell you why. I've worked an awful lot in Scotland, and I don't we know Scots folk in this audience, have we, right here? No. The Scottish humour is very similar to my own hometown of Liverpool. The Scottish are very, very dry, and they're very, very laid back with their humour. And I've worked an awful lot up there. I did 2 pantomimes, actually, up in a place called Inverness. That's where I first learned that Hogmanay means help me up. But... and I heard a tremendously funny story, I thought it was really good, about a band leader called Jimmy Shand. Does anyone remember Jimmy Shand? Yeah. With the country dance band. And Jimmy Shand and his 4-piece or 5-piece band were on tour doing the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, on this little mini tour, you see, and they're staying overnight in this little boarding house, little guest house, you know, 5 of them. And the woman who owns it's got a face like a hatchet, you know what I mean? Hair in a bun, you know, face like that. And they come down for breakfast, and on the table there's 5 cups of tea, no pot, 5 slices of toast, no butter, and a little tiny pot of honey. And Jimmy Shand said to the lady, I see you keep a bee. It's brilliant, isn't it? And, you know, it always worries me that when that kind of humour leaves the British Isles and goes to other places, what effect must it have on people? I mean, you hear stories, don't you? You hear that story about the fellow who was reading the paper and it had, you know, a tour of the Yukon, 150 quid. You know, chance of a lifetime to see the north of Canada. And he thinks, I'll go for that. And he pays his money and he goes across to Canada and he gets one of these big fur trappers. And he says, OK, Limey, I'm going to show you around the Yukon. He said, you stick with me. He says, us Canucks are the Canucks, he said, were... is it Canucks? No, that's near Birmingham, isn't it? It's Canucks they got it. He said, that's Canucks. He said, we know what we're doing. He said, out in the Yukon, you got to watch yourself. He said, because I tell you what, the worst thing you can fear in the Yukon has got to be a hungry grizzly bear. He said, it's the one thing that nothing in the world can outrun. You've heard of panthers and things like that. He said, nothing can outrun a hungry grizzly. He said, so you watch yourself when you're in the Yukon, stick with me. And they're going out trekking, with the snowshoes on, and they've been gone about a week. And suddenly they've camped in this little clearing in the forest, and they suddenly hear this, "Rah!" And through the trees comes about a 90-foot grizzly bear. And this Canadian says, you better say your prayers, Limey, because that's a hungry grizzly, and nothing can outrun a hungry grizzly. And he looked round, and the English fella's putting a pair of running shoes on. He said, what are you doing? Nothing can outrun a hungry grizzly. He said, no, but I can outrun you. What effect must we have on the rest of the world? I mean, what happens when people from Britain go to Australia? I mean, have you ever been to Australia? It's a great place. I mean, all right, they talk funny, we know that. I mean, Australians, they answer their own questions, don't they? You know, they do that, don't they? What's your favourite colour, blue? They always do that, don't they? I love that story about the fella from Liverpool who was emigrating to Australia. And when he got to Australia House, they said, have you got a criminal record? He said, I didn't think it was still compulsory. But you see, Australians are lovely because they're very similar humans to us. It's the Americans who must find it strange, mustn't they? And you hear these lovely stories, which must be true about Americans. You know that lovely one about the two fellas laying paving stones in the street? And the American tourist come up, he said, what are you guys doing? They said, we're flagging. For the corporation, flagging it's called. You put your sand down, you put your brick on it, and you hit it with your rubber hammer. Flagging. He said, I suppose that's interesting. He said, personally, I work in computer engineering. Of course, in my job, we have to work to the nearest thousandth of an inch. This fella said, well, that's no good to us because we've got to be spot on. I'm talking about people from Britain going abroad. What about when people come back? Cue for a song.